How long have you believed that spiritual awakening would be like walking through an eternal garden of harmony and light? We are born believing in gardens, but time, in its severe wisdom, forces us to walk upon raw, arid, and sometimes hostile earth. If you feel that something is missing in your journey of deep self-knowledge, perhaps it is because you are still trying to escape the world instead of looking at it head-on. Today, we are going to cross the veil of illusion. We are going to talk about the emotional maturity that is born when we stop demanding that life be kind and start cultivating a virtuous courage. We will explore how the philosophy of Hobbes and Thucydides, united with Carl Jung's shadow psychology, reveals that true compassion is not passivity, but a conscious choice made by those who know their own strength. This is the invitation to the end of naivety, the moment when your soul ceases to be a leaf in the wind to become the very axis of the hurricane. But, to walk upon this earth without getting lost, we first need to understand the nature of the ground we step on, leaving behind the mirages we built to protect ourselves. Many seek the awakening of consciousness as a refuge, a form of anesthesia against the sharp edges of reality. However, the idea that the world is a garden designed for our comfort is a trap that prevents true growth. There is a toxic positivity that makes us close our eyes to the chaos, calling that escape peace. But the peace that depends on the absence of conflict is not peace. It is merely a fragile truce. As the wisdom of the Tao and contemplative spirituality teach us, life is a flow that includes both the storm and the sun. When we demand a forced harmony, we create an abyss between who we are and what the world is. Real personal development begins when we accept the raw earth. It is in the dark and dense soil that roots find the nutrients to sustain what will bloom high above. Awakening requires facing what hurts, what bothers us, and what is real. As Rumi would say, there is a way of seeing that does not depend on physical eyes, but on a readiness of the soul to face the desert without a thirst for mirages. The soul is in no hurry. It has a rhythm, and the rhythm of maturity requires the end of childhood fantasies about existence. Once we accept the density of this soil, we understand that peace is not something we find resting in the shade of trees, but a fortress we build while the river of life winds through the stones. To understand our existential intelligence, we need to look at the dynamics of power. Thucydides, a historian and thinker of ancient Greece, observed that the world is moved by collisions of interests and the search for security. On the path of spiritual awakening, we often make the mistake of waiting for the external environment to become silent so that we can meditate. However, inner peace is not a natural state that we find ready-made. It is a construction maintained by a conscious and continuous effort. The spiritual seeker must stop waiting for the absence of conflict to start acting. Life is not a straight ladder, but a river that meanders to teach us softness in the midst of the stones. If you use judgment about how the world should be to avoid dealing with how the world is, you are using spirituality as a shield against the present. Applied philosophy shows us that virtue does not flourish in a vacuum, but in the arena of life. It is in the friction with others, in the management of our fears, and in the acceptance of impermanence that we forge a truly awakened human consciousness. However, this fortress risks crumbling if we do not realize that the greatest battles do not occur in the visible world, but in the deep tunnels of our own soul, where what we judge outside is only the echo of what we have not yet governed within. When our internal structures of meaning fail, we are thrown back into what Hobbes would call a state of nature, a place where our shadows fight amongst themselves without governance. This is where Carl Jung's profound contribution on the projected shadow comes in. Often, our acidic criticism of the outside world and our constant judgment of others are merely defense mechanisms to avoid facing our own intimate fears. Judging others is often an unconscious attempt to survive an internal chaos that we have not yet learned to govern. Your body hears everything your soul whispers, and if your soul whispers fear, your gaze will project danger around every corner. Deep self-knowledge requires us to recognize that the enemy, or the evil, we see out there may be the mirror of an unintegrated wound in here. All healing begins with the acceptance of what hurts. Instead of projecting, the invitation is for introspection. What is this chaos trying to reveal to me about my own lack of inner governance? By illuminating these tunnels, we discover that true maturity is not born from the fragility that hides, but from a strength that, knowing its own shadow, chooses firmness as an act of love and presence. We have reached a crucial point, the differentiation between being nice and being virtuous. Aristotle teaches us about virtuous courage, which is the golden mean between cowardice and recklessness. Being firm does not mean being aggressive or violent. It means knowing how to sustain your position and your truth under pressure. Kindness without firmness is merely submission disguised as spirituality. True ethics and compassion are born from inner silence and personal responsibility, not from using dogmas as a shield. Real connection with others only happens where judgment dies. Rumi reminds us that beyond ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. It is there that the soul meets its authenticity. To inhabit this field, you must release the invisible knot that bound your heart to the need for external validation. Inner transformation happens when you stop seeking the reflection of who you are in the eyes of others and become the lamp lit in your own darkness. And it is in this silent firmness that naive hope for external miracles dies, allowing the soul to finally breathe in its own rhythm, becoming the very lamp that no longer depends on other lights to shine. To conclude our development journey, we need to face the challenging concept of the end of naive hope. It is not about falling into despair, but about abandoning the hope that serves as an excuse for inaction. It is accepting the truth without the filters that distort reality to make it bearable. Escaping from pain sabotages spiritual awakening. The trap of the external gaze makes us look for saviors or instant miracles, preventing the recognition of internal potentials that we have not yet accessed. You are not broken. You are in transition. The void you feel is not an absence, but the wind of presence, clearing the ground for something more authentic. Accepting that we do not walk through gardens is, paradoxically, the first step to finding the true beauty of life in its most sacred and essential form. Thus, by loosening the knot that tied us to the desire for a perfect world, we awaken to the sacred beauty of a real world, where each step is a signature of our own truth. Today, we unite the strength of Hobbes, the naked reality of Thucydides, and the virtue of Aristotle to understand that being good requires being strong. Reconnecting with your soul requires you to govern your shadows. I invite you now to a small ritual of silence. Imagine yourself holding a small seed in the palm of your hand. This seed represents your kindness. Now, feel the ground beneath your feet. Firm, solid, sometimes hard. Realize that for this seed to bloom, it needs the strength of the earth to protect it, and your firmness to not allow the wind to carry it away before its time. Breathe deeply, integrating your light and your shadow. What if the pain you feel today, this reality check, is actually the portal to the sovereign life you have always sought? How will you apply this new firmness in your search today? If these words touched something inside you, perhaps it is time to take one more step on this path of reuniting with your inner truth. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue receiving content that nourishes the soul with presence and authenticity. Share in the comments what resonated with your heart. Your story might be the mirror someone else needed to find. If you are looking for a safe haven, know that our community is the sanctuary where fertile silence is shared and deepened. Enjoy the posts on the channel. And, to continue expanding this field of presence, we suggest the video pinned in the card. May it be a source of inspiration on your journey. Peace and light.